Chosen One shares powerful teachings in exclusive live event. I'm going to take you somewhere you've never been before. And once you enter, you won't leave the same. This is the story of a night that changed the course of thousands of lives, including mine. It was the night the Chosen One revealed his teachings for the first time. And I was there, front row, heart racing, soul shaking. Every word felt like it was meant for me. And if you're watching this, I believe it's meant for you too. But before we go there, you need to understand something crucial. None of this was supposed to happen. I was lost. I don't mean a little confused lost. I mean the kind of lost where you wake up in the morning and wonder, why am I even here? I had everything people told me I needed to be happy. Money, recognition, a shiny digital world applauding my every move. But inside, I was hollow, empty, like a beautiful shell cracked down the middle. Then I heard a whisper. No, not in my ears, in my soul. You're being summoned. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion, but it wouldn't go away. In my dreams, on quiet walks, while scrolling endlessly at night, it repeated like a heartbeat. And then, without warning, a message appeared on my phone from a sender I didn't recognize. No number, no name. Come to the event, midnight, you'll know where. I should have laughed, but instead, I got goosebumps, because deep down, I did know where. There's this ancient amphitheater just outside the city, buried in silence and shadow. I'd passed by it 1,000 times and never felt drawn to it. Until now. I didn't tell anyone. No friends. No camera crew. Just me and the dark road. As I approached, I expected eerie silence. But what I found, hundreds, no, thousands, of people already gathered. Each one staring forward in total silence, lit only by the glowing edge of moonlight. No stage. No lights. No music. Just one solitary figure standing barefoot in the center, facing the crowd with calm fire in his eyes. The Chosen One. He looked ordinary, a simple robe, hands by his side. But there was something about his presence that made time slow down. Something electric. Something eternal. And then he spoke. You are not here by accident, he said. His voice gentle but booming. Every step, every heartbreak, every moment you thought was meaningless, brought you here. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to. The air itself vibrated with truth. He continued. We live in a world that trains you to wear masks, to numb the voice within. But tonight, the masks fall. The truth will rise. And you will remember who you truly are. I don't know how else to say this. His words didn't just enter my ears. They entered my blood, my bones, my pain. I felt everything I'd buried come rushing to the surface. Every regret. Every lie I'd told myself. Every time I silenced the part of me that still believed in love, in hope, in something more. Some of you, he said, looking directly into the crowd, and I swear, he looked right at me, have been running from a silent scream inside your soul. You think no one hears it, but I do, and tonight, I'll teach you how to hear it too. That's when it began. A rumble, low at first, like thunder from miles away. People looked around. Some clutched their chests. One woman beside me collapsed to her knees and began to weep. Not from fear, but from release. The Chosen One raised his hands. And the wind itself obeyed. I am not exaggerating. The trees surrounding the amphitheater bent inward, as if bowing. The stars above pulsed brighter. Then he whispered the first teaching. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fear. You are the watcher behind them, waiting to be remembered. At that moment, I felt myself leave my body. Not floating above, not hallucinating, but expanding. Like I could feel the life beating in every person around me. The grass, the air, even the space between the stars. And then, the sky opened. I'm not kidding. A beam of light, like a column of golden breath, descended into the center of the circle. Some gasped. Others collapsed entirely. I just stood frozen, tears streaming down my face. The chosen one stepped into the light, unblinking. From this moment forward, you are not the same, he said. Because now you have tasted the truth. And once truth is known, it can never be unknown. He closed his eyes. And for what felt like eternity, the entire space was still. Not quiet. Still. Time paused. The noise of the world vanished. All that remained was being. Then suddenly, like someone hit the unpause button, everything snapped back. Sounds returned. Crickets chirped. The coolness of night touched my skin. But I was different. He looked at us again, eyes glowing with compassion and fire. I will give you 5 teachings tonight, he said. But only if you agree to receive them not just with your ears, but with your life. We all nodded. We didn't even need to speak. The commitment had already happened in our souls. The first teaching had already been given. You are not your thoughts. But what came next, no one was ready for. Because the second teaching was not a sentence. It was an experience. He pointed toward a man in the front row, mid-30s, muscular, skeptical look on his face. You, he said, you buried your real self at age 12 when your father told you emotions made you weak. The man's mouth dropped open. The color drained from his face. How do you know that? He choked. The chosen one smiled softly. Because I was there. Not with my body, but in spirit. And tonight, I give you back what you lost. Then he said something in a language I couldn't recognize, but somehow understood. And the man fell to his knees, wailing. Not in pain, but in freedom. You could feel decades of shame burning away from him in real time. And I realized in that moment, this wasn't a show. This wasn't a metaphor. This was divine surgery. The chosen one was not just teaching. He was activating. He turned to the crowd. Every one of you has buried treasure inside. Pain covered it. Lies buried it. But tonight, we dig it up. He raised his hand. And I swear, a tremor shook the ground. People screamed. Others dropped to their knees. But there was no fear in it. Only awe. And then he gave us the second teaching. Nothing real can ever be taken from you. The light within you is eternal. Everything else is illusion. He looked at each of us as if he knew exactly which illusions we were addicted to. Approval, fame, control, safety. Let it fall, he said. Let it all fall. What remains is you. And in that moment, people all around me began doing the unthinkable. One by one, they pulled off items that symbolized their masks, wigs, watches, designer jackets, sunglasses, even old family heirlooms they said no longer defined them, and placed them at the center of the amphitheater. It was raw, unfiltered, holy. And then came the moment none of us will ever forget. A child, no older than 10, walked into the circle, alone, unafraid. He looked up at the chosen one and said, "Can I remember too?" The chosen one knelt, hugged him, and whispered, "You never forgot." The child's body lit up. I'm not exaggerating. His skin glowed with actual light, like something divine just woke up inside him. And the second it did, I felt it activate in me too. We all did. Tears, laughter, shouts of release filled the air. Something ancient was happening. Something no camera could fully capture. The Chosen One stood again and said, "Now you are ready for the test." What test? We didn't know. Until everything went dark. I'm not talking about the sun setting. I mean pitch black. No stars. No light. Even our phones were dead. We were left with nothing but our breath. And our inner world. And that was the point. What will you trust? His voice echoed. When there's nothing left to see. The next few minutes were the most terrifying and liberating of my life. I had to face me. No distractions. No dopamine hits. Just silence. And truth. And somewhere in that darkness, I found something I'd lost a long time ago. My own voice. Not the one I used to impress, or sell, or distract. The real one. The voice that whispers, "You were made for more." And I knew then. We all were. That's when the light returned. Slowly, gently, like the soul waking up after a long coma. The Chosen One stood still. "You have passed," he said. But this was only the beginning. The forbidden chamber where the Chosen One revealed the universe's hidden code. But none of us knew that what was coming next would shatter everything we thought we understood about reality, time, and the soul itself. The Chosen One raised his eyes to the sky, and in that exact moment, the moon split into three. I swear to you, three perfect spheres hovered where the moon used to be, each glowing with its own hue: gold, indigo, crimson. The crowd gasped. Some collapsed. Others screamed. But not in fear. In remembrance. Because somehow, it felt familiar. The Chosen One pointed to the sky. "You are seeing not with your eyes, but with your soul. The veil is lifting." And then he said the words that none of us will ever forget. "Follow me to the forbidden chamber." Wait, what chamber? That ancient amphitheater didn't even have walls, let alone rooms. But then, the ground opened. Right in the center of the circle, where people had laid down their masks and symbols, a staircase of light descended into the earth. He walked down first, unhurried. We followed, one by one, no hesitation. As I stepped onto the first stair, I felt a force pass through me, like walking through a portal of pure honesty. Everything I was clinging to, my image, my fears, my need for control, peeled away with every step. And when I reached the bottom, I couldn't breathe. We stood inside an underground chamber that pulsed like a living heart. The walls weren't stone. They were vibrating patterns of energy, etched with glowing symbols in a language older than time. The air felt sacred. There were no lights. And yet, everything shimmered with inner illumination. The chamber felt like it was alive. Watching. Listening. Not in a creepy way, but in the way that makes you realize. This place remembers you even if you forgot yourself. The Chosen One stepped into the center and held up a hand. A scroll appeared, out of thin air, floating before him, made of light, made of memory. He looked at us and said, "This is the hidden code of the universe. It's not written in any book. No guru, no system, no religion owns it. It is the blueprint within you. And tonight, I will show you how to read it." He turned to the scroll, spoke something in that ancient tongue again, and it unrolled itself across the air, projecting visions like dreams into the space around us. We saw stars being born, people rising and falling, kingdoms of light and cities of shadow, We saw ourselves as children, as elders, as something beyond form. We saw pain as a doorway, and love as the only thing that ever truly survives. And then the third teaching was revealed. The world outside is a mirror, but the code is written within. The moment you stop searching out there, you'll start decoding in here. He pointed to his chest. That hit hard. I thought about all the years I'd spent chasing validation, approval, chasing purpose like it was hiding under some rock in another country, another job, another relationship. But the truth? It was never out there. It was here, buried beneath my own noise. The chosen one turned to us and asked, "What are you afraid to see within yourself?" That question punched the air out of the room. And then people started answering, not with words, with truth. One woman screamed, "I'm afraid I'm not enough." A man sobbed, "I fear I'll never be truly seen." Another whispered, "I don't think I deserve peace." Each confession released a pulse of energy into the chamber, like poison being drawn from a wound. And then the chosen one spoke again. The code can only activate where lies have been cleared. Truth is the password to your own awakening. He waved his hand across the chamber, and symbols leapt from the walls, spinning, morphing, surrounding us. "Close your eyes," he said. We did. And that's when something impossible happened. We began to remember things we'd never lived. I saw myself walking through deserts I've never visited, speaking words I've never learned, healing people I've never met. And yet, it felt like me. Another version. Another lifetime. Or maybe the truest version I'd forgotten. One by one, each of us witnessed our eternal self. The part of us that doesn't die. The part that has watched patiently through every incarnation, waiting for us to wake up. And then the fourth teaching echoed through the chamber. You are not on a journey. You are the journey. And every soul you meet is a reflection of the lesson you need most. That's when the walls of the chamber began to shift. No longer solid. They morphed into a spiral staircase that led even deeper. But only a few could see it. I turned to the person next to me. "Do you see the stairs?" I asked. She looked confused. "What stairs?" That's when I realized. The next level wasn't physical. It was internal. Only those who were ready to go inward could descend. The chosen one looked directly at me and said, "Are you ready to face the truth that will shatter who you think you are?" I nodded, even though every part of me trembled. I took the first step, and immediately, my body went numb. I wasn't walking anymore. I was falling. But it wasn't downward. It was inward. I fell through my own layers. My childhood memories. My fears. My projections. My false identities. Each one peeled off like dead skin. Until finally, I landed. But it wasn't a place. It was a version of me I'd never met. Silent. Still. Ancient. He looked at me with eyes that burned and calmed at the same time. And he asked, "Why do you keep running from yourself?" I broke down. "I'm afraid that if I stop pretending, no one will love me." He smiled. "Then let them leave. Those who love the mask can never hold the soul." That line hit like thunder. I'd been living my whole life trying to please ghosts, imaginary expectations, old wounds, and a society that feeds on our insecurities like currency. But in that moment, I understood. Freedom is being seen with nothing to prove. I opened my eyes. And I wasn't in the chamber anymore. I was standing on top of a mountain. alone, with the wind roaring around me. The stars overhead were closer than I'd ever seen, like I could reach out and pluck one. The chosen one was beside me again. Everyone reaches this place in their own way, he said. Some call it the peak, others call it the void, but it is the same. I asked, is this the end? He shook his head. This is the final beginning. I didn't understand what that meant, until the mountain began to dissolve. Literally. The rocks faded, the wind stopped, the stars turned into points of sound. And then it was just me. Floating. In total silence. And in that silence, a voice rose. Not his, not mine, but something bigger. You are the answer you've been begging for. I didn't just hear it, I knew it. And I knew you needed to hear it too. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are the answer. You are the flame. You are the student and the teaching. And the chosen one? He never wanted followers. He wanted reminders. Because when we remember who we are, the world remembers too. As the mountain faded and my body returned to the chamber, the chosen one stood before us all, smiling. You have remembered the ancient code, he said. But one final teaching remains. We leaned in. This one, he said, could only be revealed in a place deeper than thought. He asked us to place our hands on our hearts, close our eyes, and listen. Not to his voice, but to our own. Because the final teaching wasn't something to be given. It was something to be unlocked. And when I found it, I wept like a child. Because it was the one thing I had lost for so long. Hope. Pure, undeniable, childlike, eternal. Hope that no matter how dark it's been, the light has never stopped looking for me. And that same hope is looking for you now. The chosen one's final revelation will change the way you see life forever. This is it. The final revelation. The last words the chosen one would speak that night. But before we go there, I need to take you into a space beyond logic, where language stumbles, and truth finally breathes. Because what happened next is not just a story. It's an invitation. After the silence settled, and after every soul in that chamber had tasted hope again, the chosen one stood still. The light around him dimmed, not with darkness, but with stillness, like the universe itself paused to listen. He looked at each of us as if we were the only one there. And then he said, "You've remembered the code, you've tasted the truth, but now, you must decide." We didn't understand at first. Decide what? Someone whispered. He answered with a quiet strength that rippled through the very air. Decide who you will be when you leave this place. He stepped forward slowly, his voice soft but unstoppable. It is not enough to feel the light. You must become it. You must carry it into a world that has forgotten. You must burn where others hide. Speak where others stay silent. Love where others choose fear. The crowd was silent. Not because we weren't moved, but because we knew he was right. He continued. The final teaching is not something I give to you. It is something you become. He motioned toward a mirror that appeared behind him. Tall, ancient, rimmed in symbols none of us could translate. Yet it felt familiar, almost sacred. This mirror, he said, shows not your reflection. It shows your potential. The version of you that was always waiting, watching, wishing you'd notice. He pointed to the first person. A woman stepped up, trembling. She looked into the mirror, and dropped to her knees. "I see her," she cried. "The me I thought died in childhood. The girl who believed anything was possible." The chosen one nodded. She never died. She just waited. Another stepped up. A man, hardened by life, jaw clenched. He looked in and gasped. "I'm not a monster," he whispered. "I'm a healer." The chosen one touched his shoulder. "You only played the monster because you forgot your real name." I stepped up too. And what I saw. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some shiny version of me. It was me, raw and real, scars, flaws, trembling courage, but with eyes that finally looked alive. That moment broke something open. Because I realized the chosen one was never here to save us. He was here to awaken us. And then he turned to the crowd. "This is the final revelation," he said. "Not a prophecy, not a spell, but a choice." He raised both hands. And in an instant, the walls dissolved, the ground beneath us faded, and we stood together in a cosmic field of stars. Not metaphorically, literally. Endless galaxies surrounded us, moving like breath. Comets blazed trails of light above us. The silence of space wrapped around us like a blanket of awe. It was not scary. It was home. He spoke once more. "The final teaching is this. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean, in a single drop. You are the universe expressing itself through a name, a body, a moment in time. But your spirit, it is timeless, infinite, divine." He began walking toward the edge of the stars. One step. Then another. The sky bending around him. Someone shouted, "Wait, will we see you again?" He turned back, smiling, and said words that shook the very fabric of reality. "You were never watching me. You were watching yourself, awakened." Then he vanished into light. Gone. But not gone. Because in that very moment, something erupted in every single one of us. A burst of knowing. I looked at the people around me and realized we were now the carriers of the flame. Each one of us held the same power, the same presence, the same calling. We were all chosen. Not to follow, but to become. And then, without any command, every person in that space turned, walked up the staircase of stars, and returned to the world above. But we returned changed. People hugged strangers, smiled at the sky. Some sang. Others sat in silence. Everyone had awakened something ancient, something real. I walked back through the same path I came in, but it didn't feel the same. The air was lighter. My chest unclenched. The ache in my soul was gone. Or maybe, finally understood. And that's when I realized something truly wild. The chosen one had never been a person. He had been a reminder of what lives inside you. Of what's been calling you all along. You don't need more time. You don't need more answers. You need to say yes to the voice within you that's been whispering your name through every storm. So I ask you, now that you've heard this story, what will you do with what's awakened inside you? Will you go back to sleep? Or will you rise? Will you pretend this was just another video? Or will you look in your own mirror and ask, who am I, when nothing is left to hide behind? Because here's the truth. The path doesn't start when you find a guide. It starts the moment you realize you already are one. And that, my friend, is the most powerful secret of all. You are not lost. You are being called. And now that you've heard the call, you can never go back. Welcome to your awakening. This is not the end. This is your first breath as the new you. Now go. Shine so brightly that the dark forgets it ever existed. And if ever you feel alone again, remember the chosen one's final words. You were never watching me. You were watching yourself. Awakened. Fade to black. Silence. Then a single whisper. Tag the one person you know is ready to awaken, and set them free.